Hello and welcome to another episode of Globetrotting 5. In this episode, we are going to discuss the ongoing war in Iran, where we stand, and what is the road ahead. Donald Trump today gave a speech from the White House on the war in Iran. Now, people thought that Trump would use this opportunity to give us some clarity on the war, when it's going to end, what is the future direction of the conflict, and essentially an update on where we stand. However, what we got instead was more uncertainty, because Trump essentially regurgitated his talking points from the last few weeks. He essentially said that the war will continue for another 2-3 weeks. He expressed confidence that the United States could get the job done. What that job is, nobody knows. He also said that the U.S. has won this war practically, and he's just kind of mopping up and tying up the loose ends. He said that the Iranian regime can no longer threaten the United States. It's unclear whether it was threatening the United States before this war began. He said that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, that it's now practically impossible for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. But he said that last year as well, when he bombed Iran's nuclear facilities. So there was no indication that Iran was going to have a military nuclear program. In fact, US intelligence itself has said on several occasions that there is no indication that Iran was close to making a bomb. But nonetheless, here we are, and Trump is again claiming that this entire military operation was to prevent the Iranian regime from acquiring a nuclear bomb. On Hormuz, that's the big one. Everyone is looking at Hormuz because that is the big oil choke point that the Iranians have used throughout this conflict, pushing global energy prices to record highs in some cases. Trump essentially said that this is not my problem, and he actually was kind of dismissive of Hormuz, and said the countries who rely on Gulf oil and the Strait of Hormuz for their supply of energy, they should develop some delayed courage and go and just take the oil. So essentially, he's washing his hands off Hormuz. I mean, he's saying that look, it's not my job to reopen Hormuz. Those who want Hormuz reopened, or those who rely on Gulf oil, they should go and take it for themselves. So he's not bothered. So where we are today, we are today in a position where we don't know how long this war is going to end. Trump says it's going to end in another 2-3 weeks, but he's been saying that for the last 1 month. So we don't know whether it'll actually end in 2-3 weeks' time. Second, Hormuz, no clarity. Iran has effectively shut the Strait of Hormuz. Now, suppose, let's say, Trump finishes this war in 2 or 3 weeks and he exits. What happens after that? Because he's essentially saying that Hormuz is not my problem. So the Iranians can continue to hold that leverage. It can continue to choke the Strait of Hormuz. And then what happens? There'll be no comfort for global energy prices. So that remains a problem. The Iranian regime, is still intact. Now, Trump insists that regime change has already happened because the old leaders are dead. Many of the senior political leadership in Iran is dead. The senior military commanders in Iran have been taken out. But the fact of the matter is the remnants of the regime are very much present, and they are conducting this war on behalf of Iran. The IRGC is still kicking. It is still firing missiles at Israel and targets in the Gulf Arab region. In fact, just after Trump's speech, Israel warned of incoming Iranian missiles. Bahrain also warned of incoming Iranian missiles just after Trump's speech. So, the regime in Iran is very much intact, despite what Trump claims. So it's a mess. This entire thing is a total mess. Trump has not given us any idea how he's going to end this war, what will be the day after, how the day after will look like. So it's a complete mess. We have no clarity whatsoever, and if the US exits this war, it's going to leave the region in a far greater mess than before the start of this war. So Trump has not helped anyone. He has just complicated matters. um, he has made the region more unstable. He's made global energy supplies completely unpredictable. And the only country which perhaps can look at this as a win is Israel, because Israel wanted this war. Israel really wanted this war, and they somehow convinced Trump to go along with it. And so Israel is continuing its military operations against Iran. It is continuing its military operations in Lebanon. In Lebanon, it is it's just pushing ahead with its ground operations, and it plans to occupy southern Lebanon. 30 kilometers, up to 30 kilometers from the Israeli border with Lebanon. I mean, they plan to occupy it. So that is right up to the Litani River in Lebanon. So it's crazy. I mean, it's you're clearly violating the sovereignty of a neighboring nation. You're going to occupy up to 30 kilometers of Lebanon's territory from the Israel-Lebanon border. So nobody's talking about that, but Israel is going ahead with this in any case. So Israel is the only one that can see all of this as a win. They want this war to continue. But for the rest of the world, it's a complete mess. I mean, I don't see what the US has gained out of this. It has made the region, the West Asia region, far more insecure than before. And Trump seems to be clueless. He seems to be clueless. I mean, he's trying to spin a win out of this, but it's not happening. It's just not happening. He's one day he says that he's negotiating with the Iranians. The Iranians shoot him down, saying that no, there's no such negotiations. There only some messages that have been passed between the two sides. Next day he says that I'm going to force the Iranians to open Hormuz. That hasn't happened. Now he says that I don't care about Hormuz. He says he threatens to bomb Iranian infrastructure, then pauses that. Now he's threatening, in this latest speech, he's threatening to bomb every electric plant in Iran, which is civilian infrastructure and against international law. But who cares about international law at this point? So it's a complete mess. On the flip side, there is this narrative which is growing that the war in Iran and the war in Ukraine are analogous. They're similar. That, however, is a complete misreading, because no matter what you think about the war in Iran, there is no denying that the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic regime, was a disruptive force in the Middle East. It had cultivated militias, proxy groups across the region, from the Houthis in Yemen to Hezbollah in Lebanon to Hamas. It was supporting Hamas in Palestine. And it has a plethora of allied groups in Iraq, in Syria, the Khatib Hezbollah in Iraq. So all these Shia militias it had cultivated, to sort of further Tehran's interests, strategic interests, through armed means, and these groups carried out attacks against security forces, against American American interests, against Gulf interests in many cases. So let's be clear, the regime in Iran is no saint. I mean, they were a disruptive force. They had built this Shia crescent across West Asia, and which many Gulf Arab countries found threatening, and rightly so, because look, in Lebanon, I mean, Lebanon is a huge tragedy. It has been a tragedy for many decades. The Hezbollah in Lebanon has actually dragged Lebanon into this war, because it's the presence of Hezbollah, supported by Iran, supported by directly by the IRGC, advised and armed by the IRGC. They continue to push Iran's agenda in Lebanon and across the border in vis-a-vis Israel. Like they fight Israel. So Lebanon and Hezbollah's ties to Iran is a clear example of what Iran has been doing in this region for decades, like cultivating disruptive forces, armed forces. So Iran was a regional problem. It was the regime, mind you, was a regional problem and a regional threat, perceived as a regional threat by many countries in West Asia. So that has no similarity whatsoever with what is happening in Ukraine. Ukraine is a clear case of a country, a free, independent country, trying to defend its freedom. It's trying to defend its freedom, trying to defend its sovereignty against an invasion, an illegal invasion by Russia. So it is completely different. And so there is all this comparison. What America is doing in Iran is analogous to what Russia is doing in Ukraine, or what the Iranian defense is similar to Ukraine's fight. No, absolutely wrong. That is a complete misreading of the situation. That is a deliberate spin that some people are trying to give to this situation, because Ukraine is just fighting for its sovereignty. It is fighting for its freedom, fighting for a free and open democratic Ukraine against an invading army which has taken over Ukrainian land, which has killed Ukrainian people, destroyed Ukrainian cities. Ukraine posed no threat whatsoever to Russia. Ukraine posed no threat whatsoever to Russia or any other country. It never has posed any threat to Russia or any other country in Eastern Europe. It is fighting to save itself. Iran, the regime in Iran, has been chanting death to America, death to Israel for 47 years. It cultivated militias across West Asia, armed militias across West Asia, to further Iran's strategic interests, to carry out armed attacks, to fight security forces in the region, and do all kinds of armed operations. The Houthis in Yemen. I mean, it's clear as daylight. So Iran, the regime in Iran, was a destabilizing force for entire West Asia. On top of that, the regime in Iran has killed thousands of its own people, as recently as January, where there was a huge crackdown against Iranian protesters. Some said 40,000 Iranian people died. So thousands were killed, in those protests by the Iranian regime. So the Iranian regime is not a saint. It is a destabilizing actor. It has been a destabilizing actor. So there is no comparison with Ukraine here. So Ukraine reaching out to the Gulf countries in this conflict and offering their drone technology to countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, sending their drone experts to the region to counter the Iranian Shahed drones. is an example of Ukraine being a responsible net security provider, not just in Europe, but also in the Gulf. And why is Ukraine able to do this? Because Iran supplied Russia with Shahed drones. In the initial days of the war in Ukraine, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it was Iran that supplied Russia with Shahed drones. And those drones were used against Ukraine, used against Ukrainian civilians, used against Ukrainian cities, and to wreak havoc and destruction. So Iran was a malevolent actor when it even came to the Ukraine war. It has indirectly acted against Ukraine as a malevolent actor by helping Russia in its aggression against Ukraine by directly supplying these Shahed drones to Russia. Russia then later on went on to sort of indigenize the production of the Shahed, inside Russia. But the technology and the initial, batches of Shahed that Russia used against Ukraine was supplied by Iran. So Iran was responsible for the destruction in Ukraine indirectly, but it was crucially involved. It cannot deny that it was 100% involved in the aggression against Ukraine by supporting Russia with drones. And for 4 years, Ukraine has learned how to counter those Shahed drones. It has learned, at a huge cost. It has paid a huge cost for this expertise and knowledge. It has developed its own counter drone technology, and now it is supplying the same expertise and the technology to the Gulf states. So Iran has been a malevolent actor. It has been a malevolent actor not only in West Asia, it has been a malevolent actor even vis-a-vis Ukraine. Having said that, the war in Iran has raised the economic pain for the whole world, especially through the energy supply which has been disrupted, global energy supply which has been disrupted through the Strait of Hormuz. We see it in India as well. We feel the effects in India as well. So, one hopes that there's a conclusion to this war in Iran soon, but one simply doesn't know how that conclusion will come about or when that conclusion will come about. Trump has provided us no clarity today, and we should essentially brace for the worst. We should hope for the best and prepare for the worst. With that, I would like to end this episode of Globetrotter 5. See you in the next one.